Well, hey there team, welcome back to the channel and welcome to my review in progress of Turbo Overkill. I've got a little bit of space in my schedule, so I thought I'd pick this up on a whim. It's being reviewed overwhelmingly well. It came out a few months ago, 12th of August. I think it must have been in early access for a while, but generally speaking, apparently this is a brilliant game, according to everyone except me. So for those of you that think that I don't review things negatively, well, buckle in, because I have some real issues with this game. Now, bear in mind, review in progress under my format is just 2 hours in. It's a great way to capture my, glowing first impressions that may soften as the time goes on. And potentially in this case, which I'm kind of hoping, right, because I am a very positive person when it comes to gaming, I'm hoping that it's given me a pretty bad first impression that then turns into it gets better later on, which I don't think that's a great pitch. I don't like when people say, play a game for 20 hours and it finally gets good. No, how about I throw your game into a furnace and I play a different game for 20 hours that's good all the way. But I digress. Anyway, so I'm going to probably get burned at the stake for this, for finally having something negative to say about a game that everyone else on the planet seems to think is brilliant. All right, so what's going on with this game? Essentially, it's a run and gun boomer shooter. It looks incredible. It really does. A lot of the design, the art, the movement, it's all very, very cool. Though there are some egregious things going on. I will say, even though the cyberpunk setting, it's got all the ticked boxes, right? If you had to elevator pitch this, not only would it be serviceable, it would sound great. And then if you watch the trailer, it looks great. I find that when it's actually in your hands, it's not that fantastic. The movement and all that's there. You've got a chainsaw for a leg, so you can do this sliding around gimmick. And it in fact is a gimmick in this case. And it's one of those things, at first when I was feeling a little bit more generous about it, because I hadn't really started to harden against the game a bit, and I'll be honest, and I want to eat my words. I want to put more hours into this, and I want to be wrong. And you'll see that in the next video. But for now, when you start playing a game and it's doing something odd, and it's early on, you're like, oh, okay, I don't know what to think of that. So the chainsaw leg slide thing seems pretty cool. It does so much damage, it's really overpowered, but it doesn't really have any synergy with boomer gameplay. You kind of launch yourself through dudes or away from dudes, and it makes your dude kind of harder to control. And it's good for a meme when the game's not really difficult. But then you start to realize that you're either better off just sliding non-stop into dudes and trying to kill them all with your chainsaw leg, which is fine, or standing still and not chainsawing and shooting them and just dodging traditionally. Do you see what I'm getting at? There's no real interplay between the two mechanics, and I would argue the sliding around makes life much more difficult to land these run and gun shots. Now, I turned my sensitivity right down already, being that this is a boomer shooter type game. It really is like snappy precision shooting. I don't mind that, that's fine. It almost feels like either one, the developers just threw some stuff in there. How cool would chainsaw leg sliding be? And then they just threw it in and they didn't really consider if it was actually complementary to a core loop. Or two, and this is what I'm really worried about, it's kind of a soft malice on the intent of the developer. You know what would make our shooting more difficult? If the player's sliding around like an absolute dickhead the whole time. It's already hard enough to land the shots, and that's just the nature of boomer shooting, or arena shooting, or whatever you'd like to call it. But when you're sliding around doing your chainsaw thing, you actually very quickly come to realize that it's not very productive, it's not effective. You kind of want to pick one stream or the other. This may change, but again, and I've talked about this with gameplay design, games that are designed to be good when you've got all your upgrades at the end, and then they forget that you have to play through 3/4 of the game, and the game has to be fun while you are depowered. That's not good gameplay design. A good game should be able to design, like recently we covered Cookie Cutter, right? Which I probably still need to do a follow-up review for. We did a review in progress, but the idea that game, in the early going, you haven't got a double jump, you haven't really got a lot of tools in your tool chest, but it still feels like a fully functional game. And by the time they introduce like a double jump or a new combo or something, it becomes value add, and the gameplay and the enemy types evolve around the new kit. So that's what I'm sort of getting at there. My concern is with this game is maybe it gets really brilliant in the final act and you just have to eat shit and play a weaker version of the game getting there. Another quick example, right? The Doom games, the new Doom games, Eternal, all that sort of stuff. Think about the glory kill mechanic in that. Think about that as a fundamental design philosophy. your ammo runs out pretty quick. You don't really carry a lot of ammo, which is cool. And I think a lot of boomer shooters should embrace that, whether they do glory kills or not, just to embrace rotating through. They'll give you 15 different guns, but often because of the ammo count that you have, you just pick your favorite and stick with it. And I really think games could lean into forced variety. But with those Doom games, which admittedly I haven't played in a while and not a huge amount of, but the whole idea of having to go in and do the glory kill execution thing, it helps synergize with the gameplay flow, even if in and of itself it kind of stops the flow a little bit. It gives you a bit of a moment to breathe. But my point is, it's a complementary mechanic. You have to go in and do this execute gimmick to get ammo back, and it ties into the main loop. The chainsaw thing, you can get upgrades so that it gives you tiny little health or shards or whatever, but honestly, in the early going, there is no real synergy. It honestly gets to the point where you kind of either slide or you don't slide. And I don't need to retread that, I've already said that. So there's no real interplay. There's no real synergy. The reason I mentioned Malice is because there are a lot of gameplay mechanics in here that feel like they're aimed at getting one over on the player, or a bit of an ha, fuck you, got you, that sort of thing. On the chainsaw leg thing, by the way, they send hordes of these Edward Scissorhands little dudes at you, and it's one of the most satisfying things, is chainsawing through a whole chain of these dudes, right? But now it's started to sneak in these explosive barrel dudes, like, pretty inspired art, right? It's just an explosive barrel with legs. So there'll be 20 of these dudes running at you down a narrow corridor, but at the very back of the pile is this explosive barrel. So the game's kind of trained you and dopamine fed you to slide through them with the chainsaw leg and have a gleeful moment. Except now it's like, no, fuck you. If you do that, there's going to be a guy that you couldn't see at the back of the crowd that's going to blow you up and you're going to suicide into him. Like that sort of stuff, if it's obviously a development decision, but I gotta wonder what the developers are thinking sitting in their room putting this on the whiteboard. Like, are they cackling with glee that they're going to be like, fuck the player, that's going to get them? Do they think we're on the inside joke? Now, in an isolated moment, that's one thing. But consider this, the game is full of monster closets, which I despise. I really dislike monster closets. For those that don't know what they are something that was a result of the tech limitation of the time for games like Doom. They didn't have layered levels. The way to spawn dudes in behind you or around corners or whatever, just to add more stuff to the game, was to have walls just open inexplicably, which had a monster closet. It had a bunch of dudes in there because that was the only real way they could do it within the engine. And the problem is that was a limitation at the time. It's not really clever design, especially when you have gamers moving through an area and clearing corners, right? You have an object permanency component to the way that you think when you play these games. And I really don't like these boomer shooters that, in their pursuit of nostalgia, buy in crap mechanics that have been outdated by technology. And this game's actually quite egregious. I might be able to throw some B-roll in there. You're going down corridors and there's these dudes just blowing out through walls next to you, right as you trigger past the field of view and you can't see them in your peripheral, they jump out next to you. It's gross, and no one thinks this is fun. And are you starting to see a theme? That the developers are doing this stuff on purpose, and I feel like they have more of a mean streak than a let's make it fun for the player. The really egregious thing, and I couldn't believe it happened to me the first time, I had to have a double take. But the second time, definitely, it blew my mind. And we'll find the B-roll for this. You're moving down a corridor, there's a door in front of you, you know this is where you're supposed to go. The split second you get up right next to that door and you're about to pass through it, it just puts an invisible barrier in. Well, it's visible, but it just throws up an impenetrable barrier right in your face, monster closets, monsters behind you, and then you have to fight them in this trapped arena. It's so gross. And that happened to me at least twice that I can think of. And there's another soft incident as well where they telegraphed a key you could see up in a high spot. I might have to try and find all this B-roll. You could see it through this window, but you don't know it's a window. You see it through this opening up high. So you spend all this time platforming up to it, you jump at it, and then it turns out there's this piece of fucking perspex that you can't shoot, you can't see through. Oh, sorry, you can't move through, you can see through it. So do you see what I'm saying? This game is full of this bait and switch bullshit, and I've only been playing it for 2 hours. It's very frustrating. There's a lot of other stuff that really drives me mad. A lot of open world levels. There's no map or guide or anything like that. And I don't necessarily need my hand held, but, and I'm not going to go into gameplay directional design, you know, lighting, soft arrows, things that people don't really see but your subconscious sees and it leads you through a level. No. These become very quickly these like open world, multi-layered levels that are a kind of fucking nightmare to navigate, back and forth getting keys and all that. And again, it feels like they've taken the wrong lessons from nostalgia from Doom. Doom had that, but it worked. And they had actually clean level designs, even with limitations at the time. But like I said, it's not all negative. The moment-to-moment run and gun is all right, but, you know, other than going, well, you know, the main shotgun seems to do the job, I'm happy with that. So, I don't really change off it if I can help it. You know, there are some other guns as well. There's a flamethrower that's kind of cool. That actually, really quickly, all the guns have these secondary fires, which you unlock through this bizarre shop system. I don't know why they don't just give you the upgrades, because the shop doesn't really add a whole lot of value. You collect coins arbitrarily. There's no way to force coins. Some enemies drop coins. You cash them in for the shop. You get the upgrade. It seems like a lot of busy work to trick you into thinking that there's more mechanic there. They should just give you the upgrades each level or whatever. Some upgrades essentially turn your gun into a cooldown. In fact, almost half of them. Like the pistol has a lock-on. The shotgun has like a charge up heavy attack. There's like this 3 to 5 second cooldown period afterwards. And I'm like, why would you do that? Do you even understand? Boom shooters, they don't have reloads, right? You just keep firing, you just keep moving. It's about pace. And why would you put these guns with these really heavy cooldowns? Even the minigun has a bit of a too long wind up. So some of the upgrades don't really make sense and don't contribute to the flow. But then at the same time, the minigun, you hit the alt fire and it just turns it into a flamethrower. In fact, it'll keep the flamethrower selected as you switch through. And these are cool alt fires, but are they really alt fires, or are they just giving me another gun and calling it an alt fire? So like, it seems really confused. And again, coming full circle, either they're just throwing shit at the wall and hoping it sticks, and I wonder how much of this was like a community feedback, long early access loop, where maybe they just listened to loud people in their Discord and just threw shit in the frying pan and hoped it cooked up. Or two, like I said, there seems to be hints of kind of malicious intent so as to pad their game at the expense of the player over and over and over again. So yeah, so far, I'm not super impressed. It seems like maybe it turns into a good game later on. I'm going to persevere, obviously, and put more hours into it and review. But yeah, I really am curious at this point to figure out what it is that I'm missing that everyone would simp for this game when it seems to have some fundamentally obvious, egregious gameplay design decisions, and so many packed into the first 2 hours of gameplay is so wild. Anyway, so there you go. I'm planting my flag. I've got something negative to say, but I've given my receipts on the topic as well, so hopefully people take it the right way. Let me know what you think. Team might just leave it there for the time being. I'll catch you guys on the next one.